makes me wait, and I wait without you, with or without you, with or without you.
You gonna hit the high note?
I'm gonna try.
Through the storm, we reach the shore. You give it all, but I want more. And I'm waiting for you, with or without you, with or without you. I can't live with or without you.
You're a braver man than me.
Oh, what's up, brother?
How are you?
Oh man, I'm doing really good right now. Guys, welcome to the Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius Mirshahzadeh. And boy, do we have an amazing guest, my main man, Bob Glazer's in the house. What's up, brother?
Hey, good to see you again. Or I guess this is seeing for the time being. So.
Oh yeah, I know. It's like I keep seeing you on Zoom. We got to.
Yeah, we got to meet IRL.
Yeah, the world's got to get better. Oh man, well, guys, we have such an amazing show today. Bob Glazer, this is your second time on the show. First time we were doing lives. This is our first time doing podcasts, so I'm really excited to have you here. Do you mind if I give a little bit of our backstory and then I can give your bio?
Yeah.
All right, awesome, guys. So Bob and I met. For those of you that have seen our past episode when I did it live, Bob and I met actually at Gathering of Titans. We're both EOers, both go way back in the day for EO, and we've done a lot of work there. But Bob, man, what a stud. I met him at GOT, and I'm like, dude, this guy's doing a ton of cool stuff. And I was really pumped to get to know him. And man, we have a lot of parallel paths around our love of core values. We'll be talking about that today. But I really also want to talk about a lot of the cool stuff you're doing. I'm about to go over Bob's formal bio, which is, your formal bio makes the average person feel like a loser.
You can just go with that. That's good. I'd rather you keep lower expectations than higher expectations.
No, I got to go for it. When I was writing it, I rewrote it because I was like, this sounds too businessy, and I'm going for the gold here. All so right. I'm gonna. Do you mind if I do that? Is that cool?
Go. It's your show. I'm just a guest.
Guys, Robert Glazer, but goes by Bob to his friends. Bob is the founder and CEO of global marketing of the global marketing agency Acceleration Partners, and he's co-founder and chairman of BrandCycle. He's a serial entrepreneur, and he has a passion for helping individuals and organizations build their capacity to elevate. Bob is the author to 4 books, 2 Wall Street Journal and USA Today bestsellers. I got that right. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And those are the books Elevate and How to Thrive in the Virtual Workplace. His newest book. We're going to be talking about that. Bob is the host of the Elevate podcast, where he interviews change makers from all around the world. And Bob has his Friday Forward newsletter with over 200,000 subscribers worldwide, dropping knowledge every Friday. Today's Friday. I'm sure you just dropped more knowledge. So, man, you're just a busy guy, brother.
Yeah, you haven't read it yet today? It's like, it's all good. It was about not being a well-kept secret. The last thing you want to be is a well-kept secret.
Dude, I need to not be such a well-kept secret.
Yeah.
So, man, how are you doing?
I'm good.
Man, it's been like last time you were here, the world was on fire. Here we are. It's back on fire. It's just the end of summer.
The embers are still burning, literally and figuratively.
Yeah, right. Especially in the West. I moved to Texas. I live in Austin, Texas now, but all my friends in California, they're just talking about the air and all this stuff. I'm like, oh my God, like miserable.
I was in Park City a few weeks ago, and it was blowing in from California. It's sort of like a there problem when you're not there. And like my eyes were burning. They said it was the worst air quality day in Park City history. I mean, it was pretty bad. Yeah,
we just need wildfires in the southeast, and then everyone will believe in climate change. But until then.
Or just mix the water dumping in one place with the fires burning in the other place. My really big like Elon Musk idea is to build like a water pipe system from every city so that you can take when there's, because it's just feast or famine. So you can just move the water. It's like a router to where it's needed from where it's not wanted.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. I love that idea. Let's take it offline.
We could use the oil pipes that they dug and now they can't use. So we'll be all good.
Well, I have you ever heard of this group called Abundance 360?
Yeah.
So do you participate in that, or is this?
No, I just heard of it.
So I got a couple friends that are A360 folks, and for those of you that don't know what A360 is, it's Peter Diamandis's, I guess, I don't know if you want to call it like a mastermind, or it's a group that meets all year long, and they're all about, we live in the most abundant time in history of man, and because of technology and the exponential growth of technology, that basically the best is yet to come. Right. Which is
we can
kind
solve
of
these problems. Yeah.
Right. And that we actually have the tools and know how to solve these problems, but the best is yet to come. And I read somewhere where someone was talking about, when you're in the dark ages, you don't know that the Renaissance is about to happen. But when you're in the Renaissance, you have that contrast. You're like, oh, that period was the dark ages.
Yeah.
Right.
I wonder how that message has landed in the last 18 months. We're in the best period in the history of the time. I mean, that's hard.
Yeah. Well, right. So then the question is, are we on the brink of the Renaissance? Are we, is there a prolonged
or extinction? One of the two.
Or are we
I
like
think the Renaissance may actually be our attempt to prevent extinction, right? Because the environment's going to win out. Like if we don't figure out, how to cool it down a little bit.
Well, have you heard that George Carlin bit about like the Earth?
No, maybe I have, but yeah.
So George Carlin's like, save the Earth. He's like, the Earth's gonna be just fine. Yeah. It's us who are fucked. So yeah,
so there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. Like, save the Earth. He's like, the Earth's gonna be just fine. So man, it's been a while. Like, you've been up to a bunch. You put out your core value course. You got the new book. Where do we start?
Yeah, look, those are good places, and the interesting discussion a lot around the virtual work, and I think the companies that made the shift. Like we're at a point now where we've survived the getting by, and now it's about like, what are we going to do going forward? And there's a lot of wavering, and I think companies not putting a stake in the ground. But I think a lot of the companies that made the shift easily were great organizations with clear values, good management, communication, trust principles, and like those things all transferred to remote work much better than an environment where there's no trust, no KPI, no values, no how do we behave around here? Because think about it, is there any better test of values than sending everyone home, without anyone looking over them all day long?
Yeah, that's an amazing point. And you built your current business, and you guys are completely virtual acceleration partners, right?
Yeah, we've been 14 years fully remote. I say we've gone from something that we used to try to hide as best we could to now it's in vogue, and people are asking me to speak and write books about it.
So how many folks do you guys have remote right now?
240 in 10 countries.
Man, that's that. So I think when we met, you guys were like low 100s. So you guys have doubled the size.
That's probably right.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you guys have doubled in size, a couple hundred folks remote. My last business that I exited about a year ago, when we first grew that, to just about 300 people remote, and then we ended up having some issues because I was just too early, man. The technology you can do it, but you need a lot of the technology makes it a lot easier. It also depends on the type of employees you have, I believe.
Yeah, and that goes to like our values are a very specific type of employee who work well in what I would say not remote or not remote. Our environment is very oriented around high flexibility and accountability, like people who want both or are willing to take the combination of both, I should say.
Yeah, I think that you're hitting the nail on the head. That I want autonomy, right? So I want that. So I think if you have that autonomy, but that accountability, that flexibility, where like, hey, so I'm guessing your people kind of, they work when they need to work type of deal to get stuff done. Is that how it's set up?
But look, I mean, we're a client service business. So if you want to go to London for a month, then like the rest of the world doesn't have to move around you. You need to make that, you need to not ask other people or the client to change their needs based on that. So the people who are super accountable, the flexibility is never an issue. The people who you can't find them, they, whatever, like it just, that just doesn't work. Like I always say, like we hire about, 80% of our roles or 90% of our roles are account managers. So we have some good data on that. I mean, we hire about 1.8% of the people for those roles. So we're trying to find the people who work really well in our environment, to our values, and how we work and the environment we work is a big part of that too. It's interesting. Like I do the core value onboarding training for all new employees. We just had our biggest class, 19, and bunch of people say a lot. I know people here more. I feel closer than a lot of companies that I worked in person. So there's a lot of stuff that we design to make that happen. It's intentional. We also, this gets into the weeds. We can talk about this later, but we do not let people work anywhere in the world. That's also a legal and logistical disaster when companies tell people that they can work anywhere. So we have specific, we call them hubs, where people work from, even though they may not be an office. They're geographical concentrations of employees, which allows people to get together and do things and have events, and allows our leadership team to go visit those hubs and connect with all the companies. So there's some important parts of that fabric to our strategy.
So you built the business, and when did you start Acceleration Partners? How long ago was that?
It's been about 15 years, I think now.
All right. So 15 years ago, you started the business. It was remote. I mean, remote then was.
Yeah. Like, again, we tried to
do that.
Well, it was actually out of necessity. So we were a high-end service provider in a niche industry called affiliate marketing. We couldn't in the US get the talent, was all over the place. We had to hire them where we were. And it started as something like, let's just do this and then we'll grow up and get an office. And that never happened. But literally, like, we were scared to death that our clients, which were Fortune 500 clients, would realize that we were all remote, because it was such a negative bias at the time. And, this was before Slack, this was before Zoom, this was before Office 365 and, a lot of those tools. It's always worked for us. And since we've built the whole company and culture around it, we're pretty intentional in terms of the things that we do to make that work.
So I'm intrigued right now, probably more than the average listener, because I went remote 2010, which was the first time I started working from my home office. So for me, I always joke. It's a joke. You're gonna appreciate this right now, what I'm about to say. So in 2010, I had an office in downtown San Francisco.
Yeah,
and I had a 2-year-old, right?
Yeah.
And so my 1.5-year-old. And so I'm working from home in San Francisco in my house, because I just didn't want to drive downtown, because I'd go to my downtown office, I would shut the door and just like start working. And I'm like, well, why do I need I can do this at home. I don't need to spend a half an hour commuting each way.
Yeah.
And now my employees, a lot of them worked from the office still. So my wife, she worked for this creative agency in San Francisco, she would say like, hey, FedEx is coming today. Can you get the door? And I said, well, I'm not really here.
Yeah.
And she's like,
that's always a tough. What
do you mean you're not really here? I said, no, I'm not. I mean, I'm physically here, but I'm mentally not here. I'm in a downtown office in San Francisco. I just happen to physically be working from my house. So she's like, you're ridiculous. Like, would you just answer the door? So, but I did it because I'm a type of person that can work remote. I'm so focused that would, like, the doorbell would ring, I'd be on a call. I'm like, I'm not answering it.
You probably have ADD. That's a byproduct. You can hyper focus, right, and just ignore the world around you.
So where I got in trouble though was when they would put the final notice that they were going to send the FedEx box back, and because I wouldn't answer the door because I was working remote. But the reason so I joked that you could put me in an igloo in like the middle of the North Pole and I would be able to work remote. And I do think that some people are that hyper focused. My question for you though is, like, having grown up for 2010, which is 4 years later than when you were doing it, I was. There was this renaissance of remote that started then, right? Zoom wasn't out then, but there was some decent conference call stuff, and you just started to go to the cloud. I just did a lot. You were just able. Internet was fast enough where you could do a lot of stuff remote.
Yeah.
Fast forward, I mean, go 4 years before that. How do you do that? If you have a team, were you guys all in the Boston area, or were you guys not local? Like, how did you manage a team? Is all conference calls? How did you guys do that?
Yeah, it was probably what was the one that was a big? He used to sing you that like country song.
Yeah.
That, I'm on hold. Yeah, look at how memorable that was. Look, a lot of it was actually not that. It was the fact that I always say, like, we're a little like the military in that in a client service business, Look, if you think about the Navy SEALs, there is a common training, there's a uniform code of conduct, whatever, but people operate in their platoon, 90% of their time. And I think the client service groups would actually spend a fair amount of time together. They'd go to business QBRs together. They go to conferences together. They would kind of get together. So there actually within that group was a lot of regular, connection and calls. Zoom definitely, I remember video didn't come on the scene until it was through EO that I had first ever seen Zoom and brought it back. That was probably 8 years ago. Yep. But it wasn't, it was less about, it was actually about the culture. It wasn't about the tactics. It was like this, we had a lot of parents of young kids and they said, look, for me, that just means I need some flexibility at 8:30 and 4 o'clock to like pick up or whatever. But, they really value being accountable. A lot of digital marketing. So that stuff was online anyway. Company together since we were like 8 people every year, and it's very or GOT style. We go deep for like 4 days. We have world-class speakers. It's very focused on connection, and actually I think that and people have some or some break for this, or you could have passed someone in the office. I remember one of those that's doing something with a class, doing the lifeline. I'm sure. And 2 people realized that they had very in that, and these people worked together forever, and they never knew they had this like deep common bond, and that carried forward from there.
Oh man, we had a little bit of latency just now.
I saw that.
Yeah. I'm on.
I saw you blip, but it was only 1 second though.
Okay, yeah. On my side, it went on for like 10 seconds. Do you mind if you retell that story just because I'm gonna have them edit it and fix it?
Yeah.
So
so
you were talking about, you have the account managers. They're essentially remote, but they're kind of like the army or platoons. That's where I started losing you.
Oh, I went way past that. So yeah, they spend a lot of time together. They go to clients together. They, do things together. However, we've always, since we were 8 people, gotten the entire company together once a year. And we do it very EO, GOT style, like incredible speakers, deep personal connection stuff. And I think that carries people. You could have passed someone 40 times in the office in a year and not had a real deep conversation with them. I remember we were doing like a lifeline exercise with a group at that event years ago, and 2 people had a very similar experience with their fathers, like earlier in their lives. And they had worked together for 2 years, and they had no clue that they had this like core common, connection. And I know that, for the next year, I think that totally changed their relationship. So yeah, we've actually I think that you do need these in-person moments. You do need the human connection. But there's just different things you're doing every day. In a client service orientation where you're very outward facing all day, you don't need to be in the office with a bunch of people when you're going to be on the phone, talking to your clients. It's nice to see them or otherwise. Great example is my publisher in my books. I was talking to them. So they were a no remote, before COVID, like had to be in the office. And, now they're sort of kind of hybrid and just more needs based. Like my editor was saying, look, if we're having our meeting on which books we're going to bid on, like that's a really important in-person meeting. We're sitting there, we're holding the books, we're talking about it, we're discussing. But if I need to edit your book for 9 hours in a day, like why do I want to go into the office and lock myself in my office, not talk to anyone, and edit the book for 9 hours? It just doesn't make sense.
Well, yeah, they're physically there. So some people are like, well, they're there so I could see them. I'm like, are you looking over their shoulder to make sure they're editing the way you want them to edit? Come on, man.
Or have you seen the numbers on how damaging distraction in the office? The opening stats from the How to Thrive in the Virtual Workplace book are, traffic has gone up 2%, 2 minutes a year, in every big city. And so it's taking longer than ever to get to work pre-pandemic. And then you get to work and the office environment is more distracting than ever. People are losing like an hour and a half to distraction every day, because the great open office environment thing is one of the biggest debunked, like wrong productivity experiments ever. The thought of not having closed door corner offices was correct. Like having people visible, and you're not the CEO in your big oak corner office, but having everyone open all day with no privacy, bugging each other all day long is been thoroughly debunked as a productive office environment.
Yeah, like I talk. I did the Stagen, and there's a whole thing at Stagen around attention management, right?
Yeah.
And then like if they say like when you get distracted, it takes 20 minutes to get back.
I've heard like 15, 16 minutes to get back into what you were doing, right?
Yeah, I think Harvard did some studies on this, right? So, oh shoot, we lost you. All right, we're going to edit this out. If you're watching, Bob, hopefully we'll be back. There we are. Oh,
I closed the wrong window. Sorry.
I'm like, where'd you go? So Harvard, I believe, did some studies on this, and it's I had read maybe it was 18 minutes to get refocused, right?
Yeah.
For every distraction. So when I do, right since I left my business, sold my interest in my business, I started helping companies build their core values, right? And so I've probably done, I don't know, almost 24 now.
Yeah.
And one of the things I do is I do a core value rollout, which is probably some version, and it's in my book, it's chapter 6. But when I started, I do a thing called working agreements. I don't know if you've ever done that before you start consultations. It's really cool. So before I start, I say, hey, we're going to come, and I do this in a virtual environment. So I'll do it virtual, I'll do it in person, depending on the situation. But when I do it virtually, I go, hey guys, what are the things that we need to agree on that we're going to all agree as a group to do during the next 3 hours, whatever the hour, however long the training is, that we all mutually agree upon. And so people start naming stuff like we're no side conversations. Side conversation, by the way, is you going in the chat and you chatting with someone, because that would be like you whispering in a closed room together. No interruptions, no being respectful, having fun. So they'll start throwing things out, and I put it all in the Zoom chat, and I go, okay, great. And then while I'm doing it, I say, does anyone disagree on this? If you disagree, speak now or forever hold your peace. So then we do a secret word, a safe word. If anyone breaks it, you got to say the safe word, right? So safe word yesterday, I did a core value rollout for a company, was banana. So if someone starts breaking it, we go banana to start, right? So this is again working in a virtual environment, a thing that we figured out. But one of the things I say to them, I go, hey guys, listen, you have to be willing to close your email browser while you're in this meeting. And that's my rule. I said, because let's just say, for instance, you have a ping in your email and you look, and it's Nordstrom's half yearly sale, right? I'm gonna use that that's my best example. I love using that example.
Is that a distractor for you?
No. My point being is that for me, it's not, because I hate shopping, but for maybe my wife, different story. But let's say Nordstrom half yearly sale goes in someone's inbox while they're in our meeting, in our virtual meeting, and they stop listening to Bob and Darius, the CEO and partner of the company, and look at their half yearly. I said that would be akin to, you got to knock on your door, and you wave them in, and it's some dude in a Nordstrom's outfit trying to tell you that they're having a sale. Like, you would not be cool with that if we were in a conference room and that happened. But that's the virtual version of it. So there is a big thing around eliminating distractions and getting focused that I think is a really big part of having that mindfulness of being in a remote environment. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, look, and actually, I think people struggle with that at home. I think the number one thing that they need at home is these boundaries, these physical and mental boundaries. They need the Clark Kent and Superman. Like, this is my office. Someone on my team yesterday, I was like, I was joking with her. I was a video call. I'm like, you look all dressed up. Like, you got an interview or something? And she was like, no, I do this every day. Like, I shower, get dressed up. Like, my kids know that when I'm in work clothes, like I'm in work mode. And then at 5 o'clock, I go put on my other clothes and I come downstairs. So I really think that people need those ways of focusing and not jumping back between worlds. I like my kids will know, like, again, I do all my video things from this office. I heard one of them come, like, if they come in here and they hear me on here, they'll like leave. Like, they, if I was doing this at the kitchen table, it's very confusing for them. Like yesterday, I was doing something at the kitchen table, and my wife kept asking me something, and I realized, like, I'm sending mixed signals on that, because again, I can block out the world, but she sees me, and then if she starts asking me something, and I'm like, I'm right in the middle of editing a important email. So it is better to create those physical and mental separations.
I love that. And so one of the things I want to dive into, which is a concept I touch on in my book around the importance of core values, right? And so I figured this out when I went remote early on. We had a couple hundred employees, 83 ENPS. I mean, just crushing it. To your point, lots of alignment around behavior. And I was like, wow, when core values are alive and well in the organization, my position on this is it becomes a language of accountability in the organization. You get what I call an invisible manager, right?
Yeah.
And what it is it's that core value alignment. And in a virtual environment, I started saying this early on too. I said, if you want to have a successful virtual environment, you need to have a common language of accountability. Your core values will help you thrive in that environment, because they will. I don't need to say, hey, Johnny, you need to work harder when I'm not looking over their shoulder, not at their house, because they just work hard no matter what. I could put them in an igloo in the North Pole, and they're going to work hard. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So I think it's two things. It's values, and then people are having to move from input to outcome management. Like, I'm not like, look, Darius, if I let you choose, okay, salesperson A makes 100 phone calls a day and sells $1,000 worth. Salesperson B makes 10 phone calls a day and sells $10,000 of product. Which salesperson do you want?
Oh, 10,000 all day long.
Right. So, but most managers, that's not how they manage. They're managing to inputs. Like, they're managing to how many phone calls did you make, not did you get the outcome. So this what goes back to just, I think, well-run organizations. Show me an organization that had integrated goals, annual goals, quarterly goals, public accountability for the KPIs, outcome-oriented metrics, good delegation. Like, they weren't going to have a problem with moving to remote. Right. And look, our core values are own it, embrace relationships, and excel and improve. The first two are a concept called interdependence. Own it, embrace relationships. We need and want people who want to make decisions and own it and are comfortable doing that. But they're also not like, solo artists. They believe they're better as part of a team, and they want to be part of a team, and will defer to the team and get help from the team and make the team better. So that's a very specific DNA of someone who works sort of in our version of remote work.
What talking about that, I have a friend, Rick Gerard. Do you know Rick?
Yes.
Higher Power. So he and I have had some pretty in-depth conversations, because his whole thing is around building hiring systems that
he just came out with a new book, right?
Yeah, his new book, I think, is called Higher Power.
No, he's got a newer one, which is about like helping people get over their career trauma, which I think is pretty interesting.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So I didn't know that. So is this the one with Gino Wickman did the forward?
He might have. I haven't seen it yet.
Okay. But the big thing with him, which is where I see tons of overlap with what you just talked about, is his things around building recruiting systems that are completely baked in values, right? Which is, we need to hire for values, right? Obviously, skill set's important, right? Like competency matters. But if I get two equally competent candidates, but one's a value fit better than the other, then it's a no-brainer who you hire. So, but how do you design systems? And I love what you said earlier, which is you have to design for the outcome in your business if you want to have a thriving virtual environment. And I'm a big believer of designing culture, designing the outcomes, this is all design based. You want to have a great outcome in your business, you got to design for it. You want to have a great culture, you got to design for it. You want to have a team that is intentionally working together virtually, you need to design for that, because it doesn't happen. Guess what? When they're at home by themselves, that doesn't happen by itself. They don't actually build like congruency in a team, but just by happenstance, right? It happens because I believe you have to be, I used to tell them you have to be at least 5 times more intentional with a virtual environment than you do with in the office environment, because you get a lot of these casual passings in an office environment.
Yeah, the definition of culture, which is one of my favorites, how people act around, it like what is more important when everyone is not around, you have the principles that are sort of overarching.
Sorry, you there? Can you hear me, Bob? Shoot, having some tech difficulties. Bobby, can you hear me?
Yeah, it just jumbled for like a second, then it came back.
Yeah, I lost you. You said that you let's if you don't mind redoing that. So you said the definition of culture.
if one of the definitions of culture that I like is how people behave when you're not in the room, then literally in these environments, no one is in the room. So do you have a set of core values that actually would dictate how people are behaving and how they can make decisions when they're not in the room with you?
And so with that being said, you know, obviously you like writing books. You've written a couple of them, a couple that haven't done too bad. What was the, you know, motivation for the How to Thrive in a Virtual Workplace? Was it COVID? Was it that you've done it? Like what was the writing a book's not an easy thing to do? What got you motivated?
One of my personal core values, or my overarching purpose, is to find a better way and share it. And, you know, we had been doing remote forever. COVID hit. I try to be helpful. People are asking me to speak on remote work. I'm speaking, I'm getting a bunch of questions. I'm updating that presentation. I'm doing it again. And then I'm like, I'm just doing the same thing again and again and again. I went to my publisher. I'm like, you know, people seem to, this knowledge would be helpful. Like, let's see if we can get a book out. And we got the first ebook out in 90 days. And I was like, and I almost gave it away. I was like, here's the playbook. And I took another 3 months and interviewed a bunch of CEOs and started to get actual data about what companies are doing. And then that was the full book that came out in January. So that was really the impetus, was like, are there ideas here? Look, I think as you do, the business is a huge tool for change. But that comes through good leadership, because that's what creates good business. So if there's some, you know, if we had some ideas or best practice or otherwise would help these organizations get through this and function better and, you know, be a better place to work for their people, then, you know, I wanted to try to share that.
What do you think is, if let's just say there's a lot of people, my former business partner was anti-remote, right? This was like a culture clash he and I had initially. He was like as far away from remote as you could possibly be. And even we never agreed. We just fully never agreed on it. So which is like not a good thing to have with your business partner. But we worked through it. But I have right, because of COVID, most businesses, especially white collar businesses, were kind of forced to go into remote, right? Especially services businesses. So I have a client, $200 million company down in the Southeast, and they're a non-remote business, right? They do it by necessity, but the CEO, he was like a put on your suit and go to work type of guy. Like he likes it. He likes the interaction. He likes the culture of the office. A lot of CEOs like that. He just now, one of the things he did was he's like, look, I need to. They have about 100 remote employees, 400, 500 total employees. He said, look, I need to understand my remote employees a little better. So one of the things he started doing was he works remote 1 day a week just to start to understand that environment better. But what are some things which I thought was kind of cool? And he's like, yeah, I really like it. It's focused, and I'm starting to understand what my remote employees go through more. So, and he's an enlightened leader. This guy's a great guy. But what are some, let's just say someone is of that old school camp, knowing that the world's changing regardless if they like it or not, knowing that millennials are like, listen, boss, I want to work from Tulum, whether you like it or not. Yeah. What advice would you give to someone that has that old school mentality, that's trying to move but is afraid to do it? What's the first step?
So here, I'll tell them a story. So in 1998, remember when the internet was sort of coming out and all the companies, I remember reading these articles where these, mostly older male CEOs would brag that they didn't know how to use email. They barely knew how to use a computer. Their business was fine. That was all cool. That was disqualifying 2 to 3 years later to be a CEO that didn't know how to use their email. I think most of those people were out of their job within 2 to 3 years, and they're like, "Oh, this digital thing is just a fad." So I don't think since then we've had a existential impacts the entire business moment, and I think what a lot of people do is they're reacting to their sunk costs, like the sunk cost fallacy of like, I've done this, I spent this, I have my lease. They're looking backwards, not forwards. Like, I would look forward. One of the stories in the book, my friend Eric Huberman, I don't know if you know Eric. Eric had this cool, hip digital agency. They built this $2 million office build out in LA in 2017. And they had Silicon Valley, I think, was shot there and all this stuff. And he was like, this is central to our business and who we are. COVID hits, a year of COVID. They survey employees, like, how many of you want to come back, don't want to come back? 90% of the people never wanted to come back to the office again. And so, Eric wasn't like you guys, we've got an office, like come back. He's like, well, then we're going to get rid of the office. Like, because clearly 90% of the employees don't want it. I don't think there are a lot of people that could make that sort of, sunk cost thing. I mean, when you see all these really remote work or flexibility things coming out, they're coming out from older male leaders. It just feels like their grip on power is slipping. I need everyone in the office is slipping. As you said, my favorite quote, Mark Cuban keeps saying this with respect to cryptocurrency. He keeps saying, demand and supply are undefeated. And if all of these talented employees want flexibility and want some aspect of working from home, and you want to be the company that goes, we don't do it, you can play that game. I just think your talent pool is going to shrink.
Yeah. That's I love that. Supply and demand are undefeated.
Yeah.
Tattoo that on your head, people. That's
great. It's great. It's great advice. Like, it's never worked. I remember reading years ago that the war on drugs was such a failure because they attacked supply and not demand. Like, the more that they did the drug bust, the more prices went up, the more it became like the more violence there was. Like, it's just really interesting.
Yeah, I love that. That's fascinating. So fine. I'm an old school mentality guy. I get. But logically, I get it. But I'm afraid. I'm afraid to do it. It is
fear. It is out of your comfort zone. It is lack of control. And I would argue that if you're operating your company that way, you're probably operating on this like old playbook anyway that's been expiring in front of you, that you just haven't noticed. So maybe this is the wake up call. All the pandemic did was advance things that were already in motion by 5 years. And that's why we're not going back to 2019, because all of these things were already happening. You looked at the number in remote work and flexibility and digitization. I mean, my parents had never grocery shopped online before, and but they're going to keep doing it now. Like, so a lot of these changes, I think, are permanent. And again, I think great leaders do two things. They make a definitive decision. I realize that's repetitive, but a lot of people are hedging now, and they're not saying, look, here's our strategy, whether you like it or not. Actually, the people have said, you're coming back to the office by October 1st, or you don't work here. Well, I don't agree with that conclusion. I think their clarity around that is actually the right thing. And you figure out, like, again, what makes the most sense for my business going forward and looking forward into the world, not back to where we were.
So yeah, like, I love all that. What if you're going to give advice though on what's the first change they should make to try to get comfortable with it? Like, what would be one easy thing that you recommend for people to do? The first thing to make that first step. If like, obviously Zoom, you were forced to do it, but to your point, people are ripping people back into the office. Google's doing it, Facebook's doing it. Like, what's the first step to accomplish that first step out of your comfort zone? Like, how do you get people to start to wrap their head around a new playbook?
I think it is that outcome orientation. Like, how do you start putting your metrics out there, changing the conversation around, this is what we expect and this is what we need. And I'm not going to manage you day to day on how you're getting there. I'm going to manage you week to week or otherwise. So I think it is moving towards this thing saying that if we are getting the outcomes that we need as a business, because that's what's most important, then I'm going to be willing to become less comfortable with how and where that's being done.
And so, can you stay on? I know we're running a little late here on the show. Or do you got a hard stop?
No, I'm okay.
Okay, cool. We'll run for another 10. So two questions. One is, okay, great. So now we're getting people moving in the right direction. One of the experiences I had with working remote was, I found, and there's data to support this, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. About 1 in 3 people could work remote. They could work from anywhere. Like, they have the right constitution to do it. It's easy. They don't get distracted. They have the right home work environments. What about the other 2/3? Because what I found was, some people, they cannot work. They need to step out their house. Yeah. They need to go to an office. They
call them the social butterflies, the raging extroverts. Yeah, like, it's like torture to tell them they have to work from their house all day.
Yeah. How do we? Is your thought process that there still is a place for office, but we need to embrace the fact that this is a big piece of non-office?
I'm actually not a person who said that offices are going to go away. There's going to be no offices. I come back to this word flexibility. Like, I just think of, like, 2 years ago, your kid was sick on a Friday and you said, I'm not going to be in work today, right? I think the difference now is you say your kid is sick and you go, you know what, I'm going to do what I need home from today, and no one blinks and realizes that you get it done. So I don't think offices are going away. I think some things are better done in person. God, like I couldn't do another executive offsite on Zoom. They're terrible. Like it's so bad. Strategic planning, that sort of stuff. It's just way too draining. You need the whiteboard, all that stuff. So yeah, I don't think we're going officeless, but again, I think to that example of the publisher before, like I think we need to, understand flexibility and context and results and what should be in person, what doesn't have to be in person, and what are the expectations, because I think hybrid's going to be the strategy that a lot of people choose. It worries me the most. I think that hybrid needs to be a strategy in itself, not the absence of a strategy. Yeah. I've heard 10 different hybrid company strategies, from you can do whatever you want to we're in the office on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, to you need to be in the office 50% of the time, to you need to be in the office for these sort of things. All of those have different implications for employees about why they may or may not want to stay at your company or work at another one. And again, as a leader right now, like you got to put a stake in the ground. Like we're past your employees are wondering whether they're going to work at your company. And frankly, like you may find that you call them all back in the office and you tell them they were coming back October 1st and they're all interviewing. So you might be in for a real rude surprise on October 1st. So yeah, I think that leaders' job is to make decisions that aren't always popular with everyone, but to make them definitively. And I think it's time to do that with any company, saying, here's our go forward workplace model. Not that we might tweak it, not change it, but as best we know now, here's what it is and here's how we're going to support it.
Yeah, I love that, man. Like, making those hard decisions. And I think this goes to the next thing I want to talk about, which is values, right? Yeah. And like getting clear. I say that core values don't need to be nice. Right. And what I mean by that when I say it is, it's a little bit of a provocative statement. But what I mean by that is you are who you are. If I'm hey, I want you in the office because it's important for us that people physically interact. It's important for us that people, have that part of our company. And by the way, it's my company. So I'm going to do what I want with it. Right. And
at least you're being honest. Right. Yeah. I mean,
totally.
The example I always give, I know, which will resonate with you, is like, and this is what always frustrates me. If you're an ex-athlete and you want a super hyper-competitive A-type culture where 80% of the bonus goes to 20% of the people, you fire 20% of the people, you're like, just tell people that. There's plenty of people that'll come work for that. Just don't say, oh, we're all about teamwork here. Because you're not. You're about winning and losing. And I bet that company's probably growing 40% a year and doing some cool stuff, but it's about winning and losing. And your company events should all be hyper-competitive and like, ringing the bell type environment, and just own that. Like, don't sell this other crap that someone, because if someone comes and they're like, oh, this isn't, to me, it's always, I use the quarterback now. Like if a running back signs with a team and realizes they're run and shoot, they go, oh, you know what? Like I need to get a different team because I'm just not enough, passes here. Like I always say, if someone doesn't like our company, I hope they go, you know what? I picked the wrong team. Like they are what they said they are. What people frustrates people is when you sell this narrative that is not at all who you are or what you believe.
Yeah. The we're family first, but hey, I want you to work 6 days a week and you better work weekends and nights. And oh, by the way, if you don't hit your numbers, your job's at risk. And we don't, like this hardcore environment. I'm like, hey, listen, you're hardcore, own it.
Right. We're family first. Again, this culture of, and look, when Uber was doing great stuff like years ago, they had this sort of like the bonuses went to like an incredibly like small, number of people, which made it very cutthroat. Like, but it's just, again, saying like, this is it. This is the environment. If you're the type of person who wants to win or lose that bonus, then great. But don't say we are teamwork and it's all teamwork and we're all equal, because that's just not true.
No, Uber's number 7 core value when Travis was the CEO was toe stepping.
But like, yeah.
That's
what they did. Like, look, so one thing I'll give them credit for, like, let's not pretend that the cab industry is like a wonderful, like it's a cutthroat medallion. Like, so if they were going to make any waves in that industry, like they had to break some rules. That's like going into like hardcore, so that made sense given where they tried to break into.
Yeah. Hey, kudos to them for that. So,
Yeah.
so we'll end on this. Like, this comes down to being clear on your personal values, and if they align to let's assume a company's being authentic with their core values.
Yeah.
But it really comes down to, I think, you as an individual being clear on your core values and making sure they align to the company core values. So you put out this great new course,
and your boss, right? You may have a boss where you guys don't align on 3 out of 5, and that's just like core oil and water, right?
Yeah, not going to work, right? You need to have what I always tell people is I say, listen, your core values don't need to necessarily be the same as your company. They just can't be in conflict with your company.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your course, and then we'll get you wrapped up and get you out of here. But yeah, I'm so pumped you're doing the individual personalized values course. Talk about that.
Yeah. So I figured out my core values 6 or 7 years ago. It took me like 6 months to a year. I collected all this stuff. I didn't find any real process. I just knew it was important. It was the most important change I made in my life, was understanding those values. Anything I was telling everyone, anything anyone reads in my bio that is an achievement happened after that date. It's like BC and AD. And I actually took that process and we started using it to train leaders in our company as part of leadership training. I'm like, look, you got to understand your personal core values or else you can't lead authentically. Yeah. And I just saw some awesome like epiphanous breakthroughs, and we, built this curriculum out over 2 years. And then when I wrote Elevate and I talked about core values, people were like, all right, well, how do I do it? And I'm like, I can give you some keywords. I'm like, I don't have an easy answer for that. Like, I have this process. And after we had it really good at the company, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to open this up to anyone who wants to do it. And that's what I did. And a lot of company teams have taken it, and people have written me that had some breakthroughs. Like, I think it's a real clear way to get down to some like actionable personal core values for you.
So do you mind if I ask what your top core values are?
Yeah, I think I told you before, right? It's find a better way and share. It's a pretty dominant one for me. Respectful authenticity, which is an interesting sort of version. Again, that's my version of integrity. That's what it means to me. Self-reliance, long-term orientation, and health and vitality. And look, I'm saying those to you without any notes or anything, right? I mean, that it's like a company core values. I don't have any notes. Like, these are like, when I am making decisions, those are the key points of when I was deciding what the hell is Friday Forward and I should continue this thing and it doesn't make any money. I was like, but it really checks every single core value. Like, yeah. So let me do that. And amazing things came out of that.
Have I shared with you my personal core values?
I don't think you have.
Okay, I have 6. I know like 6 is a lot. For 5 is like my.
It all depends on your memory. As you get older, you might need fewer.
Oh man, I just couldn't do it because there was really 6. So heart, which is all about, happiness.
Yeah.
Besos, which is love. This is my family core values too. Eye of the tiger, which is passion. Yeah. Cinco, which is curiosity, and it stands for what, where, who, when, and why. Boom, creativity, and then movie night, which is balance. So those are my 6.
And you got a little memorization on each one. And yeah, and if you have a big decision in your life, or you look at something where you are, and this is what the course takes you through, happy or unhappy, you're going to find that you are either working in the zone where you were kind of aligned to all those things, or you were being asked to do things that went against those.
It's funny. I used last time we talked, when you're on the show, we talked about that specific thing you just talked about, and you used an analogy that I stole from you and I use all the time now, which is that you thought, and maybe you want to give it again, which is talking about a car driving through a tunnel and then you hit the wall, right? That's the friction. That friction when the car starts hitting the wall.
That's what most people are doing, right? They're in the tunnel, the lights are off, so a core value has been crossed when you smash your nice car up against the wall. And so what do? You pull it off from the wall, and then you'll probably hit the other wall. If you're driving a really nice car, if you turn on the light and paint the lines, it'd be a lot better to stay away from the walls.
Stay inside the lines, right? Like go down the fair. Yeah. And it's, I love that.
You're not going to feel good when you're look, when you come across someone who just doesn't care or has no heart or makes a selfish decision, it's going to literally get your blood boiling. I mean, one of the tests in the curriculum of if a core value is accurate is this notion of an anti-core value. Like, what is the anti-core value? Because it should be kryptonite. It should feel terrible, right? Like, for me, find a better way. Someone's like, look, we just can't possibly improve that. Those are fighting words for me, when they say that, right? So normally when I'm testing a core value with someone and I come up with the anti of that value, and I say, so how does it feel like if this person, like Darius, is sitting in front of you and talking like this and whatever, and they don't even have to answer me, their face curls up. They get tense and scowly. Like, it is, there's a physiological reaction to it.
Yeah. Oh man. You and I are so aligned on the value stuff, on all this stuff. Actually, I love, man. Listen, you're brilliant. I love all the stuff you're doing in the world. It's just, man, you're kicking ass, taking names, and it's so fun to watch you do that. Thank you so much for coming on the show, brother. I appreciate it.
No problem. And look, I set up all your users. I know you'll share the URL, corevaluescourse.com. If you use the code greatness, they can take it for half off. It's definitely worth an hour of your time.
Yeah, guys, go ahead. We're going to put this in the show notes. But yeah, if you want, that's so nice of you to do that. www.corevaluescourse.com. That's Bob's personal core value course. You got to know your core values. I tell people this all the time when I'm doing core value rollout. Part one.
It's not easily done. It's not. It's easier said than done.
Well, what's interesting about this, and we'll end on this, is that, I looked up the definition of core after I wrote my book about core values. I was like, I never looked up what the definition of core values is. So I look it up. Core values are the fundamental beliefs of a person or an organization, right? So then if you ask, and this is not something when we're in first grade, we're taught, right? We're not taught what our core values are. By the way, I'm writing a kid's book called What Are Core Values?
Nice.
I'll show it to you when it comes out, but we're working on it right now. And it's like, this is not something you're taught, but it's your fundamental beliefs. So
it's your operating system, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So guys, go out there, check out Bob's course. He's such a kind and generous guy to give us a code. So greatness is the code. Is that what they need?
Greatness is the code. Yeah.
Right. So greatness for the greatness machine, guys. Type in greatness under the core values, www.corevaluescourse.com. Code greatness, and we'll put that in the show notes. And man, so much fun, so much having you guys. Sign up for the Friday Forward newsletter. Check out was it robertglazer.com? Is that where they can find all things Robert Glazer?
That's where they can find everything. Yeah, glazer.com.
Guys, all things Robert Glazer. My brother, thank you for coming on.
Great.
Love having you.
Thank you, man. Have a good weekend.
All right, guys, peace out. We'll see you guys later. We're out of here.
All right.
Bye-bye.